Hello and welcome back to Study Forum. Today we are studying a play, The Flies by Jean-Paul Sartre. The time and the date of the first publication is in 1943 in Paris, France, and the setting of the play is around 12th and 13th century BC, when the events of the Greek myth of Orestes took place. The setting of the play, or the place where this whole play revolves around, is Argos in Greece. Okay, now let's see some important characters in the play. So, the protagonist of the play is Orestes. Then, Jupiter is the god's king. Electra is Orestes' sister. Aegisthus is the present king of Argos. Clytemnestra is the present queen and mother of Orestes and Electra. Agamemnon is the former king and the father of Orestes and Electra. The tutor is the one who raised and educated Orestes. So these were some of the important characters in the play. So now let's start the play. Orestes, the protagonist, arrives in the city of Argo with his tutor. The tutor is the one who looked after Orestes for years, and now they are coming to the Argo. The tutor complains that the city is unpleasant and that the Argives are very unfriendly. But Orestes says that he was born there. Jupiter, who is the king of gods, approaches them disguised as a man and tells them the history of Argos. The history is 15 years ago, Queen Clytemnestra and the king, which is the present king, Aegisthus, murdered Agamemnon, the old king and the previous husband of Queen Clytemnestra. The Argives all knew about what had happened, but they did not try to prevent it. So therefore, instead of punishing them, the god sent flies to torment the city. Since the murder, the Argives have been living in remorse, attempting to atone for their sins. Jupiter mentions that Agamemnon had a son named Orestes and expresses the hope that if Orestes ever come back to Argo, he would not interfere with the remorse of its people. Since this remorse pleases the gods, when Jupiter departs, Orestes complains to his tutor that he feels that he does not belong to anywhere. He has no home and no true family. He wishes he could somehow belong to his birthplace, which is Argo. Electra appears. Electra is sister of Orestes, but she is yet not knowing that Orestes has arrived. Okay, so Electra appears and curses the statue of Jupiter in the square in the middle of the Argo. She expresses her hope that her brother will one day come to avenge for his father's death and will free the Argo. Orestes introduces himself to her as Philebus. She tells him that her mother had made her into a servant. Queen Clytemnestra behaves with her as if she's servant, and that she hates the king and the queen. Orestes tells her that outside Argos, people can live happily without remorse. Then Queen Clytemnestra appears and tells Electra that she must come to the annual Dead Men's Day ceremony. Okay, so Electra explains to Orestes that on this day the dead are led out of a huge cave so that they could torment the city for a whole day. avenging the sins that the living have committed. Electra and her mother quarrel. They fight out loud, but finally Electra agrees that she will come to the ceremony. She asks Orestius to stay long enough to see that ceremony. Electra asks this to Orestius. Clytemnestra asks Orestius to leave Argos because his presence is upsetting Electra and threatens to bring disaster. Who Clytemnestra is trying to threaten Orestius, telling him that Electra is disappointed by his presence, although there is nothing such. Then Orestius decides to stay for the ceremony because Electra asked her for. So then, accompanied by Jupiter, Orestius come to the ceremony. Then Argives publicly announces their sins and scream in fear about how the dead will torment them. Aegisthus tells the guard to find Electra, but they cannot locate her. He begins the ceremony reminding the Argives of their sins. The cave is opened and the dead are set free to torment the people, the Argives. Suddenly, Electra appears, dressed in white. The people rebuke her for disrespecting the dead, but she begins to dance and telling the Argive that people in other towns live happily with no remorse and the dead would prefer to see them living and be happy and not remorseful. When the Argives begin, the people of Argos are Argives. So when the Argives begin to listen to Electra, Jupiter causes a large stone to roll down from the cave. Terrified, the people curses Electra. That rolling down of the stone terrifies the Argives, and therefore they curses Electra for tempting them. Aegisthus orders her to leave Argos forever. Once others have left, Orestius approaches Electra to convince her to live with him. She tells him that she must stay in Argos because she is waiting for her brother, who would come, and she must remain there to help him to carry out his revenge. Electra assumes that his brother Orestius will come one day and take the revenge of their father. So Electra is waiting there for his brother to come. On that moment, Orestius reveals his identity to Electra, that Electra, I am your brother Orestius, disguised as Philippus. Electra is completely shocked because she was expecting him to be a warrior who would revenge for their father, but now she is shocked to see him that he is just a common son of the king. Even though she now knows that Orestes is not a warrior who cannot help her with her revenge, Electra tells him to leave and she will stay there. She says that she must stay behind. Orestius asks Zeus. Zeus is the god of sky in Greek-Roman mythology. So Orestius asks Zeus if he should leave Argo like a coward or whether if he should stay. Jupiter causes a light to flash suddenly on that moment around the stone, and therefore Orestius realizes that he must stay and free the people of Argos. He will not obey the orders of the gods. Realizing at last that this is really her brother, who she thinks has come to help her kill the king and the queen, Electra agrees to join him. Jupiter enters the palace and orders Aegisthus to arrest Orestius and Electra immediately. But he refuses, saying that he is tired of putting on a false pretense for his subjects and would rather die than go on. Jupiter tells him that Orestius is dangerous. He knows he is free and this would upset the entire order that Aegisthus has been building in Argos. As soon as Jupiter leaves, Orestes and Electra springs out from their hiding place, and Orestes kills Aegisthus. Electra loses her nerve and tries to stop him there, but Orestes brushes her off and goes on to kill the queen. The siblings then decide to hide in the shrine of Apollo for that night, but Electra realizes that the flies around them have turned into the Furies, that is, the goddesses of remorse. Orestes and Electra wake up in the shrine the next morning, and Electra is horrified at what has happened. She rejects Orestes, saying that he had brought guilt on her through this violence. The Furies egg on her, and the Electra gives herself over to this torture in order to escape from her guilt. Jupiter enters, promising the sibling that he will give them salvation and the throne of Argos if they repent on their crime. Orestes refuses. Jupiter tells Orestes that he is completely alone and that he has violated the law of gods. Orestes responds that he is free and that he can follow only his own laws, even if it means that he must be alone forever. Jupiter departs, saying that he pities him even though Orestes threatens his order. Electra spurns Orestes and runs after Jupiter. Completely alone, Orestes speaks to Argos, who have gathered outside to kill him. He tells them that he is Orestes, their rightful king, and that he has come to free from the remorse, that is, from the flies and their remorse, that he has taken their sins upon himself, and they must learn to live their lives in freedom. He leaves the city and the Furies follows him. Okay, so this was the whole play. If you have any doubts, any queries, you can write that in comments. See you next time. Thank you.